Hello everybody, welcome back to Calvaro TV. Thank you so much for coming in to check out my videos. This one is going to be talking more in depth about Anubis and going over his abilities and the two main builds that I use for him. I mentioned in my previous video that I have used or tested, I guess, at least 50 different builds trying to find build that works for my personal play style. I've pretty well narrowed it down. I've been sticking with the same build now for a couple of months and it seems to work pretty darn well. So I don't think I'll be changing it anytime soon unless something gets nerfed or changed in a way that drastically affects the way he works and how well he works. So here I am just in the main lobby now. This is just a background that the game automatically picks. It switches occasionally, but I'll go right into it here. Anubis is this guy here. He's considered a warrior assassin. He's mainly meant for the top lane and the jungler. I've used him in every single lane, kind of more just in casual games, but when I'm in ranked games I try to just stick to the top lane, and if necessary I will be the jungler, but he really excels. Well, my play style, I excel with him when I'm in the top lane. He's one of those characters that can do a lot of damage right off the start, and so if I can get into the top lane and get a good farm going on not only the minions but also the other person in the top lane, then I can pull ahead and level by at least one, but usually two, maybe even 3 levels sometimes ahead of everybody else, and able to pretty well dominate the game at that point. But I'll go over his abilities really quick. So the first ability here it's technically a passive ability. It's called Interrogate, and as it says, he gains a stack of answer for each time he damages dealt. It doubles against heroes up to 42 stacks, and it lasts for 4 seconds. Each stack of answer provides 0.5% movement speed and 1% attack speed. So this passive ability is pretty epic. So as you see, he gets 42% attack speed, and it works out to be, I guess, 21%-ish movement speed, which is awesome, especially that attack speed. Well, really they're both equally awesome, because a lot of players will have like a secondary ability that will increase their speed, or they'll flash away, like do a little mini teleport to try to get away from you, but that extra movement speed allows you to catch back up to them quickly. Or other people who will try to will activate an ability that gives them like a rush of speed for 3-4 seconds, whatever it is. It's pretty much wasted, because it's very difficult to get away from Anubis when he's fully stacked up on answer, and so this is absolutely amazing basic ability. So the first actual attack is his basic attack called Blade of Scales. This deals 350 damage plus 80% attack power damage, and then for each 2 attacks, the next attack, so basically your third attack, will strike both blades, with each blade dealing 200 damage plus 60% attack power. So he's basically a dual wielding champion. In the picture it makes it look like he wields this large dual bladed staff looking thing, but that's not quite accurate. He's actually a dual wielder. He runs around with 2 blades in each hand and attacks that way. So this basic attack here is for every third attack, basically he attacks an additional time, splitting the damage up as you see there. So And then you also have to consider his attack speed goes up to 42%, and that's actually relatively quick. Some people may not realize, especially if you haven't played him, that 42%, it stacks up with no matter what kind of damage you're doing, whether it's melee damage or with any of his any ability that he does. If he's dealing damage of any kind, it puts a stack of answer on. So that 42% adds up extremely quickly, and you can keep that 42% up almost constantly if you're able to farm between minions and players. But I'll get more into that here as I show the next couple of abilities. So this ability is his first kind of main, an advanced kind of an attack move. I think it's called Elegy. That's what I'm going to call it. He throws his blades out, dealing X amount of damage. This is per a level every other level. It increases damage every time you train the skill up as you level up, for a total of 6 times. So you get 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, and 500 damage plus 40% attack power damage to enemies in this path. So it basically throws his swords out in a straight line, but if you want to, before the swords come back to you, because they're kind of like boomerangs in the sense that they shoot out and they come back, but it's in a straight line. But before they come back to you, if you tap the same ability again, you blink to wherever the blades are currently. So when you get good and you time it out, you can use that to advance your position, to kind of chase somebody down or get to somebody that's coming after you before they really expect it. You can just throw your blades out really quick, tap it again to blink to your blades, and if you do that, it does an additional 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, or 1000 respectively per level that you've trained that skill up to, plus 60% attack power damage to enemies all around you. It doesn't specify the radius, but it's probably like 2 meters, maybe 2.5 meters. But it is like an AoE kind of a damaging ability, so it's very possible to damage more than one person with that ability. This is your main kind of go-to. I start off every fight with this ability. Well, I should say most fights. If the cooldown is up or not up, I guess. If this ability is active, I use it. It's a very hard-hitting ability that allows me to kind of get that initial edge on the fight. Sometimes this will crit. My current build doesn't have any crit built into it, so my crit rate or my crit damage doesn't happen very often, but unless I have my crit build on, which I'll get into later. But this can really start the fight out in my favor dramatically. I can do sometimes half of a person's life bar with just this one ability, and so by the time they're even able to respawn and attack me back, they're already half dead, which is obviously a huge advantage. So this next ability I'm going to go to here is Sandstorm. Essentially you want to have Sandstorm up at all times, but I'll go over the description really quick before I get into too much more detail. So the passive of this ability is it restores 1 point of what's called gravels per 0.1 seconds. So it's like a mana bar or like a fury bar kind of, where with other like spellcasters or with some warrior classes, this is a secondary bar underneath your health that regenerates as long as this ability isn't active. But when it is activated, it raises a sandstorm around you. It's a radius, like an AoE that follows you around everywhere you go, that deals damage per half a second. And as you see respectively, per level of training in this skill, you're doing 125, 135, 145, 155, 165, 175, plus 15% attack power damage, and 10% movement speed reduction at the cost of 15 points of gravels for each half a second. I don't know what the total points of gravels is. I'm guessing maybe it's 100. I don't know. The game doesn't specify. I've never looked it up. But this will last, it's probably a good 5 seconds at least. I've never timed it out, but it's a significant amount of time. So I can pretty much have this up once activated easily through one entire fight with somebody, unless they're a really tanky character and it takes me a while to break them down. I can kill 2, sometimes 3 people while this ability is active. It's doing damage to them and it's reducing their movement speed, which again helps it makes it more difficult for them to get away from me, which then stacks onto one of my ability cards that I have, which increases my ability to stay on top of people. And you'll see that in my gameplay videos, where once I jump onto somebody, there's only one other character I've found that I have a really difficult time keeping up with, and that's Morgan. I won't go into her skills too in depth, but Morgan has a couple of different skills that allow her to take flight and increases her movement speed by 30%, which is technically more than what my speed reduction total is, and so she's able to get away from me fairly easy. But if whoever's playing Morgan stays and actually fights me toe to toe, it's normally a winning battle for me, just because Anubis is a warrior assassin, whereas Morgan is a straight up assassin. So she's not as tanky. She doesn't have as much like armor and health, and also doesn't put out the same kind of damage. She does very good damage, but the way I've built my Anubis, I've only ever played against one person on Morgan that I actually struggled to kill, and everyone else I don't have any problems with. But going into the last ability here, which is called the ult, or the ultimate ability, it's called Feather of Truth. This is probably, in my opinion, one of the top 5 most OP ults that this game has to offer. Basically, I'll read the description and then I'll explain gameplay how this works out. So Anubis blinks to the target hero, measuring his soul, lasting 7 seconds. Each damage dealt by Anubis on the target hero will rebalance the feather up to 10 times. Each time rebalancing will reduce target's movement speed by 2% and attack speed by 10%. So I'm going to stop there really quick and explain a little bit better what that means. So every single time I attack, I'm reducing not only their movement speed again, but also their attack speed against me. That in and of itself is a huge bonus, but it doesn't stop there. So if the target's soul couldn't take 10 plus rebalancing times, sorry, let me read that over again. If the target soul couldn't take 10% max HP damage, the rebalancing times 1-1.5-2, then Anubis will sentence him to death. After the measuring or Anubis's death, abilities will still deal the same value true damage on the target hero. So again, here's another part of this ability that's absolutely OP. I can still kill people after I die with this ability, because it stays active on that person until it either triggers or until they die, which their death causes it to trigger, but it will also trigger prior to them dying if the 7 seconds is reached before they die. But if I'm attacking somebody and I activate this ability, it may only last for 1 or 2 seconds, because it measures their amount of life that they have left and the amount of damage I'm doing to them, and it will trigger sometimes right away, and it will trigger sometimes not until the full 7 seconds has gone by. So it just kind of depends on how long the fight lasts, how much damage you're doing to them, how much life they have left, those sorts of things. But ultimately, the most important thing to know about this ability is that when it triggers, it's a big giant scythe appears in the air and swipes down and hits the player. It follows them everywhere they go, so there's no getting away from it. It's just constantly stuck to them. But once it hits them hard, and it hits for a lot of damage. And very often, I would say, if I time it correctly, especially on more tanky characters that have a lot more health, I would say 80% of the time this ability kills them, even if they have as much as half of their health. Usually I can time it to where if I activate this ability early on in the fight, it still most likely kills them, as long as I don't get interrupted in my attacks to them, and I can chomp them down to get pretty close to dead by the time this ability triggers. But if I can get them below a third or even a quarter of their life when this triggers, it's a guaranteed kill. So this is huge. Basically what this means is I really only need to do, half to 3/4 of the damage of a person's health in order to really actually kill them. Because even if I die, this ability stays on them until the 7 seconds plays out, and then it triggers and hits and kills them. So pretty OP in that sense. So let's see. If the target hero dies in the duration, whoever killed by refresh this ability. Okay, so what this means is if this ability is active and it triggers and this person dies, either due to the trigger or to my damage or any other player's damage while this ability is active, it instantly refreshes and is available for me to use again. So, holy shit. Like, if all goes well, I can play the entire game with my ultimate always up, and I get my ultimate at level 4. So, if everything goes smooth and I do my timings correctly, depending on who I'm fighting or what I'm fighting, I can literally have an ultimate 100% of the time in the game, and I can use it over and over and over again. And you'll see in my gameplay videos where I can jump from player to player to player, because again, the first part of this ability is it causes Anubis to blink to the target hero, measuring his soul, and the range is pretty significant. I can be relatively far away from somebody, and if I want to instantly just blink to them and begin attacking, I just use my ult and it blinks me to them. I'm instantly on top of them, I'm attacking them, I use my sandstorm and I just chomp them down, and as long as they die with this ability active, it instantly refreshes and I can do it again to the next person, and just so on and so forth, without it ever going on to cooldown. The only time it goes into cooldown is if it triggers before the person actually dies. So enough on that. I probably beat that to death, but I've talked to many people in game that just don't understand how that ability works, and they totally gimp their experience really, and their own play experience with Anubis, because they don't use this ability correctly. So alright, now I'm going to get out of his abilities, and we will go into the builds. So for those of you that are familiar with MOBAs, you've got a series of either gear or in this game they're called cards, but essentially it's kind of the same thing, where like in League of Legends, you acquire gear as you farm minions and gain coins, and kill players and gain coins. You can purchase pieces of gear that enhance your abilities and your skills and your health and all of that stuff as you go. Same concept here, but they're called cards, except that you gain your cards by experience and by your level. It has nothing to do with Like, you don't have to earn X amount of experience points before you can purchase this card. But you do have to earn X amount of experience points to get to the next level. But as you can see on each card at the very bottom of the screen, along the bottom here where I'm tapping, each card has a number on the bottom, and that number represents what level you have to be on your character before this card activates. So the more experience you're getting, the faster experience you're getting it, the faster you're going to level up and unlock each card and its ability and what it does for you. And so this build right now is what I personally call my tank build. It's not a true tank build in respect of like if I was playing an actual tank character, I would totally have different cards, because this is more of a DPS tank build. No, well, I should call it more of an attack speed tank build, because well, it's really it's kind of all three. There's, because of my attack speed bonuses I get, obviously my DPS goes up, but then I've also pumped in some tankiness with extra health and some armor. But I'll just go through each card, explain what it does, and how I use it in the game. So this first card, named Frenzy, instantly gives me 175 additional attack power. So as you saw in the skills, each attack skill does X amount of damage plus 80% attack power, or whatever that number may be. Every character is different. Some of them are 100%, some's a 120%, but when it's saying plus X amount of attack power damage, it's referring to this number here, the 175. So 80% of that number will additionally add to what damage I'm doing with whichever skill I'm using. A secondary ability on this is dealing damage against enemy heroes increases 25 attack power and 5 movement speed for 3 seconds up to 10 stacks, and this effect is half if the attack is ranged. So this isn't really for a ranged character, because you're only getting half of the bonus, but you know, some people probably use it in their builds, I'm not sure. But this is definitely more focused on melee attackers. So basically what this means is every time I deal damage, I'm increasing my attack power and my movement speed for every single attack up to 10 stacks. So I'm increasing 250 attack power and 50 movement speed. So again, there's another movement speed bonus that I'm getting. So I have a lot of abilities that reduce movement speed of my enemy but increase movement speed of myself, like my basic passive attack ability that I showed early in the video, and then now this skill, or this card, gives me an increased movement speed as well, plus additional attack power. So every hit that I do up to 10 stacks increases the amount of damage. So if I can keep this ability fresh, which is difficult to do because it only lasts for 3 seconds, but those 10 stacks add up quickly. So in a fight, I go from no stacks to 10 stacks so fast that it's kind of, it's almost like having it up all of the time. So this is a really powerful card in terms of just straight damage boost with that little bit of extra speed. So this next card that I get at level 3, so sorry, I should back up. I get this first Frenzy card right at the very beginning of the game at level 1. So once I hit level 3, I get Frosty Bite. This gives me an instant 1000 health and 175 additional attack power. So again, a little bit of tankiness, a little bit of extra attack power, but this is another ability that I have that reduces my enemy's movement speed, because ability damage, which for Anubis is that Sandstorm ability, well, any of his active abilities that basically aren't his basic attack. So really all three of my basic or my advanced attacks, I apologize, will trigger this secondary ability of this card, which reduces 18% movement speed to targets on hit for 1 second. So the reason why this card is so powerful for Anubis versus other characters is because of his Sandstorm ability. Because as you can see, that 18% movement speed reduction, it only lasts for 1 second. But that's per ability damage being done. So most advanced attacks for most characters, it's a one-hit wonder kind of thing. You activate it once, it's on a cooldown, and you can't use it again for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 seconds in some cases. So this card wouldn't be very useful for those abilities because it's really only reducing their movement speed by 18% for 1 second every 5 seconds or 6 seconds or more in some cases. So you're not really going to see the benefit that Anubis does because his Sandstorm ability attacks them every half of a second for a long duration until his Sandstorm, or until his secondary bar of what's called, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. I'm going to have to jump back to it really quick. Gravels, that's right. So until his Gravels bar runs out, it's doing ability damage every half of a second. So I'm able to keep this speed reduction active the entire time that I have the Gravels or the Sandstorm ability active and doing damage on a character. So it's literally almost the entire fight, which is a huge, obviously a huge advantage for Anubis. Specifically, there aren't any other characters that I know of in this entire game that have an activated ability like that does. Actually, no, Phoenix has one, and I can't think of any of it off the top of my head, but there's a very few characters in the game that have activated abilities that last a good amount of time, that do damage, you know, every half a second to a second, that specific card would be beneficial to. So you don't see very many people's builds that have this card due to that fact. So now at level 5, I receive this card, which is called Black Powder. It instantly gives me another additional 150 attack power. But this is actually where this card really shines. After using an ability, now that's any ability, I have all 3 advanced attacks, and they will all trigger this. So after using an ability, it increases 60% attack speed for 2 seconds, and basic attacks against heroes refresh the duration. So essentially, the way I use this card in game is I will use my first advanced attack that throws my swords out in that straight line, that allows me to blink to my swords and do an AoE damage at the site of wherever I blink to, and that is how I usually close the gap between me and the enemy that I'm trying to fight. But that will trigger this 60% attack speed movement, and then I instantly go into basic attacks. So, and then I instantly drop my Sandstorm ability, which is also an ability that would essentially trigger this card as well. So what that means is literally the entire time I'm fighting somebody, because his basic attack is really his main attack. Everything else is just kind of supplemental to his basic attack. So as long as I start the fight using either Sandstorm or my brain isn't Elegy, then that card's 60% attack speed gets activated, and then I go straight into basic attacks, and that literally stays active during the entire fight. So having an instant 60% attack speed boost is pretty OP. A lot of melee characters will use this card, especially if they have a secondary ability that triggers it, which most do. I would say probably all of them do. So those first 3 cards I get early game are, as you saw, mostly attack power with their own individual kind of secondary abilities that either increase my attack speed or, you know, movement speed of my my enemy, or an additional attack power. So those are more geared toward damage for the most part. This one with a little bit of health makes me a bit more tanky. But this mid game is where I kind of focus a little bit more on the tanky side of things, with an attack power there in the middle, which I'll go over here in a second. So my level 7 card that I get is just it's a very simple card, but it's a very powerful card, called Advanced Stone Skin. 2000 health, 225 armor. Just simple as that. But this card makes Anubis at that point quite a bit harder to kill. And so that's very self-explanatory there. I won't go in any more detail than that. So now at level 9, I get this card, Advanced Agility. Straight up, as you see, it's just straight up. It's 65% attack speed and 7% movement speed. So here again, I've got additional movement speed, in addition to my passive ability, as well as my ultimate when I use it also increases my movement speed. But this card also increases it, and then also again my attack speed. So just, my DPS with this card goes up quite a bit, and my ability to stay on top of people when they're trying to get away from me also increases a good chunk with that card. So at level 11, I get this card called Ground Boots. I spent a lot of time testing a lot of cards for this spot, and I've ultimately found that this one works the best in terms of survivability. If I'm wanting to do more DPS, then I swap this card out, but it gives me an additional 1000 health, 100 armor, and 20% tenacity, which for those of you who don't know what tenacity is, which most gamers probably do, but I'll explain it anyway. It's basically your ability to shrug off crowd control effects, or the duration of crowd control effects is reduced by 20%. If someone stuns me or slows me down, whatever duration that stun or slow is by default, this card reduces it by 20%. Just kind of as simple as that. But its unique passive is called Hurry. It adds 40 basic movement speed and 200 additional armor when I do get crowd controlled. So that's pretty powerful in and of itself. So there again, I'm getting a movement speed bonus. But then it really shines when I get into a fight. If somebody crowd controls me, then my armor gets an instant 200 boost, which is huge. This makes me very, very tanky, because it already gives me 100 armor. So basically, I'm getting 300 armor off of this one card as long as I'm in a fight where there's some kind of a crowd control, whether it be a movement speed reduction or a stun. This card makes me boosts my survivability quite dramatically. Now, late game here, you only get 2 cards at levels 13 and 15, and I've opted to focus on damage. I've swapped these 2 cards out dozens and dozens of times, trying to find what fits best, and ultimately I've kind of come to a spot where I've found that at this point in the game, I've got plenty of life, plenty of armor. It's time to really put the hurt on and run around and smash people's faces in, and I do a very good job at that. So this card here is called Stampede. So this is actually kind of both. It adds 2500 additional health, which again adds to my tankiness, but it gives me that 30% attack speed boost. But to be honest, I actually choose this card because of its secondary ability that causes basic attacks to deal bonus damage equal to 2% of my max health. Not the opponent's max health, but my max health. So 2% of my health, which at this point is 20,950, as you see on the top line there. When this card drops, I have 20,950 health. So 2% of that, so an extra 200 damage, a little over, almost 210 damage, is being applied to my target per hit. And also at this point, with all my attack speed bonuses, I'm hitting people about every quarter of a second. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm just chunking away at people super fast at this point in the game. So again, my attack speed's boosted even more, and I'm doing a 2% of my max health damage in additional to my base damage anyways. When this card drops, it's very noticeable how much faster I kill people. And I hope as you're watching my gameplay videos, you pay close attention. And I like to also say something in game when this card hits. I'll say something to the effect of, okay, now I'm at level 13, I've got my Stampede card, it's time to really go put the hurt on, because I get extra tanky and my DPS gets boosted really hard with this card. So the last card you get, which to be honest you don't necessarily see very often because the game is usually over by then, but if it does happen to come out, this card that I've chosen to use over lots of trial and error and testing other cards is called Tearing. 225 attack power and 20% attack speed. This is a pure DPS card. It's pretty crazy, and its secondary ability is basic attacks deal bonus damage equal to 3% of my target's max health. So now here I am at end game. I've got a card that boosts damage or does additional damage based on my max health as well as my opponent's max health. So that's whatever their health is, which when it comes to beating down a tank, somebody who's like boosted their health all the way up to like 30,000, sometimes more than that. I've seen people with like 35,000 health. This card really shines because I'm basically using their health against them with this card. I can mow down big old tanky beastie characters in half the time it takes other people, and sometimes quicker than that in some cases, and with ease, and it's pretty awesome. So this card is definitely by far one of my favorites. So that there again is what I call my tank build, even though there are cards that I could swap out that would make me more tanky. I actually have, just for fun, tested like a legitimate tank build where every single card either gave me health and or armor, and it's ridiculous. I have like 33,000 health by end game, and I've had full teams beating on me, and it takes them a very long time to kill me. The problem is, as most of you gamers already are probably thinking, my damage is so little that it takes me a very long time to kill people. So it's like, it's fun in a sense to run around and be almost immortal, but it's pointless. If they can't kill me and I can't kill them, it's just there's no point to that, right? So I feel that this is a really happy medium where I've got a good chunk of tankiness as well as some really epic DPS. So that's that build, and let's see, what are we doing here? Okay, there's my jungle build, and this is the build here that is my true actual tank build. I thought, oh, I remember what I did now. Okay, so sorry, I just came back from about a 2-month break in the game, so I had forgotten that this first slot here, I used to have like a strict DPS build, but I swapped out a couple of cards to make it my jungle build, which basically isn't much of a difference, but yeah, it does drop my DPS a tiny little bit. But this build here it is by far more focused on actual damage output. But you know what, I've just realized this video is much longer than I really initially wanted it to be, so I'm not going to go into these other two builds. I'll make individual videos about those another time, probably not tonight, but I will get to them. So that's my well-rounded overall build that I use most of the time in game. as you'll see. And oh, I got to talk about runes as well, but you know what, I'll do that in an entirely different video also. Runes are extremely powerful. They really help to boost your character's survivability and damage output. And then your talents, you have very similar to like a League of Legends. You've got all your different secondary abilities that have relatively long cooldowns that you can only use every once in a while. I will probably talk briefly about those when I do my rune video. And then at the attribute tab basically tells you, you can see starting with your first card, as you tap on each card in sequence, you see what bonuses you're getting at that level with that card. So as you get all the way to the end, once I've reached level 15, I've got all my cards out. I'm sitting at 22,500 health, which if you ask anybody, for a warrior assassin player, that's actually quite a good chunk of health. That's definitely nothing to snuff at. My health regeneration there, it's just my basic 24 per second. That's not really a ability that you focus on in this game, so I'm kind of not really sure why they even have it. But then my attack power is boosted by 725 total, giving, or it's 1285 total, with the green button is what my cards add to it. So I'm with all my cards added up, I'm getting an additional 725 attack power. And then my armor, here's a huge part that makes me more tanky, is I'm boosting my armor by 325 points amongst all my cards, which gives me a 50.5% damage reduction for a total of 1020 armor. So again, that's getting up into really tank status, honestly. But again, you know, I wanted to find a happy medium between survivability and damage. But here over to the right, I'm going to skip mana and mana regeneration. Obviously, I don't use those on this melee character, but attack speed is 1.757. So I'm with all my different cards and all mitigating effects and all of that Yahoo stuff that I'm not going to go into details about now. I'm getting a 0.782% increase, I guess, on my attack speed. But all in all, having a 1.75 attack speed, for those of you who know how that works in a game like this, that is stupid fast. But that's base. That does not account for my oops, tapping on the wrong stuff, on my black powder, where I get an additional 60% for 2 seconds after using an ability. So that number, that 1.75, is representative of just my flat basic attacks, no additional secondary effects added whatsoever. So I've got 60% additional there, that that if you wanted to do the math, whatever 60% of that total number is, would actually make my attack speed, you know, obviously 60% more. So so I'm attacking about one time every second and a half. Well, it's probably less than that. I don't know the math. I can't do the math in my head. But yeah, anyways, it's super fast. As you watch my gameplay videos, you'll see it's pretty ridiculous. Plus, I know there's something I'm missing. Is it one of my basic abilities to increase attack speed? Oh yeah, duh. I get an additional 42% for my my passive main ability, Interrogate. It has to stack up, but again, like I said early in the video, if the 42 stacks happen extremely quickly, especially if I'm fighting against minions, because my Sandstorm ability is that AoE ability that follows me around. It's doing damage to every single minion and or player within range, and so it's counting one stack for every single minion every single time it does damage, which is every half a second. So those 42 stacks literally are maxed out within a couple of, well, within like 3 to 4 seconds. Well, I should say 3 to 5 seconds of being in combat with either a group of minions and or hero or other players, or even just one hero by himself. I can have that maxed out by the time the fight's over, so getting that additional 42% attack speed there. So I really am attacking at stupid fast rates on this guy, and it's pretty sick. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. This video is quite a bit longer than I kind of hoped for, but it's a lot to explain, and I am kind of a wordy guy, so thanks for sticking around. I hope you have. Feel free to give me a like, constructive criticism, comments, questions, all the good stuff. And if you feel so inclined, please subscribe. Thanks, and have yourself a wonderful day.